In order to protect their daughter, her parents imprisoned her in a machine of less than 10 square meters. Even when delivering supplies to her every day, they would stay far away without any contact. Because their daughter has suffered from sepsis since she was a child, she can only breathe in the purification cabin. They thought they would stay in this big coffin for the rest of their lives, but an unexpected surprise came. That day, the purification cabin lit up inexplicably. What was even more frightening was that through the glass, they found a sudden flow of yellow air on the street. And the airflow is discharged from the city's sewer pipes and is accidentally inhaled. They all fell to the ground and were in the street. The father above looked confused, but he didn't wait for him to leave. 2 steps later, I saw a group of updates. A big airflow was coming here. It took only a moment of confusion, and it was about to hit the street in front of me. The man was in a mess in an instant. He also ran towards the house with all his strength. After returning home, he hurriedly pulled his wife away from the window. The poisonous gas instantly blurred the windows in seconds, and they were pervasive and penetrated directly into the house through the gaps. Fortunately, the daughter was protected by the purification chamber. After the man turned it into power-saving mode, he hurriedly pulled his wife away quickly and watched the poisonous gas rushing towards the stairs. After twisting and turning, they could only run to a higher floor. Finally, the couple arrived at the top floor. A kind-hearted old couple lived there, and they were embarrassed, so they let them in. The mother quickly took out the intercom to ask about her daughter's condition. After knowing it, Chang lost his breath. Then several people came to the balcony and looked at the terrible scene under their feet. They were speechless, but this was not the most terrifying thing. Then the man climbed up to the roof and put the looking at it. I saw that the entire city was shrouded in poison. It looked like a fairyland on Earth, but there was a murderous intention hidden inside. The poison caused a power outage in the whole city. Although the girl was fine in the purification cabin, the power of the battery could not last tonight. So the man prepared to hold his breath until when he went downstairs to change the battery for his daughter. He came to the corridor and tentatively stirred up a wisp of smoke. Although the gas was colorless and odorless, it was indeed poisonous. The round trip to change the battery took more than 10 minutes. One person simply couldn't hold it in for that long. Then the man suddenly thought there was an old man downstairs who kept oxygen bottles at home. For the safety of his daughter, he decided to risk climbing down the water pipe. Just when he was about to enter the poisonous mist, the man took a deep breath. Then he held in his breath and arrived at the target floor in a short time. After breaking the window, he successfully entered the uncle's house. Just as he was about to search, he saw a person lying on the ground. The man quickly stepped forward and discovered that it was the neighbor's uncle. However, he was no longer breathing. The man had no time to feel sad because he could no longer hold on. What was worse was that the oxygen bottle that the uncle usually carried with him was not nearby at this time. The man panicked and quickly took out a flashlight to search everywhere. However, he came and went. He searched all over the house but couldn't find it. Just when the man was about to suffocate, he finally found an oxygen bottle in a corner. He didn't dare to delay and quickly put on the oxygen mask. Then he quickly opened the valve and finally breathed it in at the last moment of oxygen going forward. When he came closer, he filled up an extra oxygen bottle and was about to leave when he suddenly heard a sound coming from the bedroom. Driven by curiosity, the man raised the hammer and opened the door. Only then did he realize that it was a puppy. But strangely, it was a small dog. The dog was not only fine but also very excited. Are animals immune to poisonous gas? But the screen he saw soon refuted this inference because the dog's mother in the room was dead. Although he was confused, the man didn't have time to think about it. Then he came home and successfully gave the dog the daughter, put on a spare battery, and brought some daily necessities with her. In order to find more spare batteries, he then came downstairs and saw the silent street. He was off balance and looked at them, foaming at the mouth and dying in misery. The man unconsciously danced on his head and drank the oxygen. Then he got under the car and collected a lot of spare batteries. Just when the man was about to leave, he suddenly heard a whistle. He walked over curiously and saw a huge. When the team passed here, the man came forward and asked, only to learn that they were sent by the army to evacuate the surviving people. Now the entire city has fallen. The upper management decided to implement a lockdown after a search and rescue. While talking, the captain saw that the number of oxygen bottles the man brought was reduced, and he still needed to take another one. He came out with a pure oxygen tank and put it on for him. Then he called the man to hurry up and follow the army, but the man couldn't leave because his family was still here. The captain had no choice but to turn around and leave. At this time, the man shouted again. After staying, the captain asked for another set of oxygen equipment and told him about his daughter's condition. Although the equipment was extremely expensive, the captain finally gave him another set. When he returned, the man was horrified to find that the level of the poisonous gas was still gradually rising, and he continued to stay. Sooner or later, they will be poisoned. They must take their daughter to escape from here. The daughter can only come out by putting on a spacesuit, but the spacesuit is far away in the laboratory in the city center. But this time the couple became angry and decided to take the risk to find a spacesuit. When they learned that their parents were going to the city center, their daughter asked them to visit her friend, who also suffered from sepsis like her, and her parents were not at home all year round. They responded to their daughter's request, resolutely refused because in this situation everyone is in danger and they have no obligation to help other people's children. Mom, if it's the other way around, don't you want their parents to do this for me? The couple was helpless but finally agreed to their daughter to take a look. But the strange thing was that when they arrived at the boy's house, they found that there was no one inside. Since the oxygen was about to bottom out, they had no time to hide. Then they quickly came to the laboratory and they successfully found the spacesuit and then took the box. The two were about to leave, but the laboratory exploded. Fortunately, they woke up not long after, but the man suddenly felt that he couldn't breathe. Only then did he realize that the oxygen pipe was broken. Now only the couple could only use one oxygen bottle back and forth alternately, and they also carried heavy spacesuits. They stopped and stopped all the way, and it took an unknown amount of time before they reached the bottom. What was even worse was that the oxygen bottle was about to reach its peak if this continued. They were all going to die here, so the man decided to let his wife go back first, and he would find a way to go home later. The wife was extremely reluctant to leave because she knew that without the oxygen tank, her husband had a narrow escape, but when she thought of what was happening at home, she still held back her tears and left her daughter, but never thought that this farewell would be forever. In order to save oxygen, my wife ran wildly in the street, but unexpectedly, the oxygen was not enough for her to rush home. In an emergency, she quickly took off the oxygen bottle and then died on the screen. I struggled to hold my breath and dragged the box towards the top. Fortunately, I finally made it back, but I never expected that what I saw next would make him suffocate even more than the poison gas. I saw that the spacesuit was burned by the explosion just now. After working hard for a long time on digging a big hole, it was just a bamboo basket to fetch water, which coaxed the woman to despair. On the other side, the man was still beating along the roof to go home, but he saw a dead person on the rooftop. Such a long bloodstain clearly meant that someone had killed him. The man glanced at the bloodstains and felt brave enough to walk inside. As expected, there were traces of someone living inside. In addition to supplies, there was also an oxygen bottle. He looked around again to make sure there was no one nearby, and then directly put the oxygen in. He picked up the bottle and prepared to use it to go back, but before he could walk out of the door, a man in police uniform walked in and warned him to put down the oxygen bottle. However, the man found out that the oxygen bottle did not belong to him at all, but to the policeman. He grabbed the weapon with the weapon in his hand and brutally killed him. The sword was pierced. The policeman also decided not to show off and slowly touched the gun with his right hand. Unexpectedly, this scene was looked at by the man who was on guard. He put on an oxygen mask. He pushed the policeman into the poisonous substance, and then the two of them struggled with each other. At this time, the pistol accidentally dropped to the ground. The policeman tried to get the gun, but the man held him tightly from behind. Without the protection of an oxygen mask, she received the lunchbox within 3 seconds. But there was no joy in the man's heart. She knew that she would be the one lying down if she didn't act cruelly. She stood up and rushed home quickly. The wife who was waiting for her to come home suddenly found her daughter in the purification warehouse. The battery was about to run out. Her husband was not at home. She ran out of ideas for a moment, but after a while, she saw that her husband had not returned yet. She decided to take the risk and change the battery for her daughter. Looking at the deadly poisonous gas in the corridor, the woman took a deep breath and continued without a trace. Without hesitation, she got into the poison gas. She ran very fast, but no matter how fast she couldn't compare to the all-pervasive poison gas. When her mother came down, she didn't even wear an oxygen mask. Her daughter was very anxious in the purification chamber, but her mother didn't have time to explain to her. She quickly put on a new one in the purification chamber. She was so burdened when she saw that the spare battery was lit up, but when she finally left, the woman seemed to have a premonition of something. Instead, she didn't rush upstairs and began to look deeply at her precious daughter. Finally, under her daughter's constant urging, the mother did this. I didn't want to leave. I don't know how long it took for the man to finally fall in love with me. However, looking at the scene in front of him, he was stunned and couldn't believe it. He slowly approached, but casually as the distance got closer and closer, she was filled with tears under the man's thick oxygen, looking at her wife who was lying in the corridor and had lost her breath. She could no longer jump, but the dead were dead, and the living must be strong. Unexpectedly, she didn't wait for the man to cheer up. His daughter's voice came from the walkie-talkie. The man knew he couldn't hide it and understood that he had to speak out about such things. But when the words came to his mouth, she couldn't speak because she didn't want to admit that his wife had left. Finally, the man walked to the balcony. I just told my daughter the news of his death. After hearing this, my daughter shrank silently in the corner without making a sound. For the first time, she felt that she was not long after the burden. A slight earthquake suddenly occurred at home. It turned out to be just poisonous gas that slowly rose. At this time, it began to rise sharply, and soon the place would completely fall. The man decided to go out and try his luck again to see if he could find some more protective clothing for the two elderly people. But the old man smiled and shook his head because their lifespan was already limited, and he did not want to waste the resources belonging to young people anymore. Finally, he took his demented wife with him. My hands leisurely walked on the road. Do you really think you and I have had a wonderful life? Oh, I really feel like I have a wonderful life with you, and that's the happiest life I have with you. It's true that you have a wonderful life with me, and that's one of the things that I appreciate the most, my happiest day, and you had a wonderful life together. It turned out that the purification chamber at the home of the friend he was looking for had long since run out of power. It was unexpectedly discovered that they were immune to the poisonous gas due to their symptoms. The man was very happy after hearing this, but the next second he revealed the people in the evolution warehouse became myself and my daughter.